Did you know that about 85% of the world's population identifies with a religious group? Hello, action taker. Welcome to Live Blissed Out, a podcast where I have inspirational and informational conversations with business owners and subject matter experts to help you get the scoop on a variety of topics. Tired of hesitating or making decisions without having the big picture? Want to be in the know? Then this is the place to go. I'm your host, Marissa Houston, helping you achieve bliss through awareness and action. So let's get to it. In this episode, Zehr shares how we can build bridges of peace in our own lives, communities, and our world. Jerry is an ordained minister and has been a leader in interfaith ministries for over 35 years. He has helped create 4 interfaith organizations, including the Carmel Interfaith Alliance and the Indiana Multifaith Network. His new book, The Peacemaker's Path, Multifaith Reflections to Deepen Your Spirituality, brings together wisdom from the world's major religious traditions, showing that we have much more in common than what divides us. Through daily readings that explore the tenets, teachings, writings, and prayers of these diverse faith traditions, you will gain new insight, understanding, and connection with people from different religious backgrounds. Each day offers a reflection, scripture passages from the world's religions, questions to contemplate, a call to action, and a closing prayer. Visit jerryzehr.com to learn more. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be here and join you in conversation today and with your listeners.
Thank you for being here. What are we talking about today?
Well, the focus that I've been working on in the last 35 years of my life is how to build relationships and understanding between people of different faith traditions and how we have so much more in common than what divides us, but how we can learn from each other, especially in our world today that feels so polarized, how we can build bridges of understanding and unity.
So I know, Jerry, that you wrote a book. What is the name of the book and what compelled you to write it?
It's entitled The Peacemaker's Path, Multifaith Reflections to Deepen Your Spirituality. And I wrote this book over the last 2 years, taking 6 themes that are in all of the major religions. Part of what I found is most of us have never read the Quran or the Hindu scriptures or the Buddhist scriptures. I grew up as a Christian, so I know the Bible, but I didn't know very much about any of these other faith traditions. Even though, like the Native Americans, I knew a little bit about them, and I thought, oh, I think that's wonderful. And I think we all love and want to work together. We love our families. We want to live in peace. But I don't understand very much about them. And so I wrote the book with 6 themes that are in all of the major religions. It's like a 40-day devotional. There's 40 different days. And each day I write a reflection. And then I have scriptures from all of the major religions. And then I'll have a prayer from a faith leader. And I have some questions for you to reflect upon. So the idea is you could take this and read it one reflection a day for 40 days, or you could read it all the way through to help you deepen your own faith and also expand your understanding of God and the world and our relationship to one another.
Many of us have grown up with our own beliefs and we see things from our own lens and we don't really understand other points of view. And when we don't understand something, we maybe misjudge it in some way or set it aside because it's too confusing or it goes against perhaps what we have learned to accept in our lives. So what do you think then is the cause of all this divisiveness? Do you feel like it's tied specifically to the fact that we don't understand, or do you feel like there are more factors that we need to consider?
I think you're very correct. I think a lot of it is misunderstanding, not knowing about somebody else and making general statements. You know, everybody says all Muslims are like this, or all Republicans are like this, all liberals. You know, we make these sweeping statements, and it's never fair to the individual. The other thing I think that's happening is because there's so much change going in our society right now, and it feels like with the pandemic, things have been so uprooted. There's a lot of fear. What's happening? I don't know where I am in the world. And so when we get fearful, we can become a little more uptight, a little more aggressive, a little more anxious.
As human beings, I think naturally we want to be heard. I think there's individuals out there right now who feel like they're not able to do that. important do you think it is to have an open dialogue so that we can hear different perspectives?
I think this is so true right now. I mean, if you watch any TV station, they're only showing one point of view and they're shouting and screaming. It's kind of like TV wrestling. And the reality is, because people are so rigid about their point of view, somebody with a different point of view than them, they can get lambasted. And so people just get quiet, they hold on, and there's not a sense of respect. And that's what I would invite, that when we can have respect for another person and we can listen to each other, now we can begin to dialogue. But, you've got to have a point of really valuing the person. I never met a Muslim before when I first started out in ministry. I didn't know anything about Islam. And so I had breakfast with this imam. An imam in the Muslims is like a rabbi or a minister. And I said, I really don't know very much, and so I'm going to ask a silly question. He said, oh, no, there's no silly questions. And I just wanted to ask him some things to learn. And the more I heard his story about how he became an imam and went to his seminary, just like I went to mine, we found we had so much more in common. And it's the same way with politics. I had friends who voted for Trump and friends who voted for Hillary Clinton. And I say to my friends who voted for Trump, help me understand why you voted. Because I know you're not racist. Everybody who voted for Trump were categorized in certain ways. And everybody who voted Hillary Clinton were categorized in certain ways. And what I found was when you care about the relationship more than the political point of view or the religious point of view, now you can build unity, understanding, some healing can come.
And this reminds me so much of one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits, which is seek first to understand. And I think today, I'm generalizing, but so many people feel like their first priority is to share their point of view rather than listen to somebody else's perspective. And I think that we can all do a better job by asking questions and being curious rather than approaching a situation through a lens of judgment.
Oh, I think so. When I grew up in a very kind of conservative, fundamentalist church where everybody was going to go to hell if you weren't a part of our church. So my friends who were Catholic or Baptist or Methodist, let alone people who were Hindu or Buddhist, were all going to go to hell. And I just didn't buy it. I just was like, if God is love and God is created this humanity in the world, God is much bigger than any of that. And so I began my own journey in studying. I traveled to India. I traveled to Europe. I studied with some people from the Buddhist and the Hindu traditions. And I found they weren't the similar teaching, but a lot of the same teaching that Jesus taught about loving God, about compassion, forgiveness, about you reap what you sow. The principle of you reap what you sow that Jesus says, which is powerful. You will reap what you plant, is the same principle as karma. In the Buddhist and Hindu tradition, they speak about karma, and karma is kind of a buzzword. Now everybody says, I don't want to do that. I don't want bad karma. Well, you're right. And Jesus talked about what you put out there. If you put out there greed and evil, or you put out there bad things, it will come back to you. Well, that's the same principle of karma. Once you learn this, that, these teachings about love and loving your enemies and forgiveness are in all of the major religions, it actually deepened my faith and my relationship with God.
I think it's due to the fact that we tend to focus on our differences rather than the things we have in common. And I don't know of any individual out there who doesn't want to be loved, who doesn't want to feel safe, who doesn't want to feel appreciated. These are all things that as humans, we all seek, and in whatever capacity. And instead, we focus on our individual beliefs, or we make judgments or assumptions about other people that then divide us.
Oh, I think you're so right. We all want to be valued and seen as a human being with our own point of view. I mean, I can tell you everything that I disagree with about Catholics or Mormons or Jews or Hindus, but what good is that? Because here's the thing. What you said is exactly what people are so angry because they don't feel valued. They don't feel appreciated because when people are protesting and they're yelling and screaming at somebody else, you can't hear that conversation has to come out of relationship. I mean, there are some people, they won't have a conversation with me because maybe they just believe in science only, or maybe as a Christian, they believe that this is the only way and they don't really want to have any conversation. And I mean, I get it. You've got to have a two-way conversation, but I think they have a point of view. And I go, your point of view is valued. Can you respect that somebody else might have a different point of view and they still are a human being?
That's the tough part there, Jerry. That is what makes it so challenging. People will say, well, if you don't agree with me, then you don't deserve to have a space to have a dialogue because my way is the right way. Maybe from your perspective it is, and it could very well be the right way. But giving a person a voice to at least let you know where they're coming from and why they feel the way they do, I think is important. So I wanted to ask you then, what do you think are the consequences when we only hear one viewpoint?
I think we become limited. We miss the depth and the breadth of God's wisdom and knowledge. We miss the breadth of experiencing the world and people. When I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and it was a town of 400 people, and everybody was just like me, and my worldview was so limited. When I went to college and I met people of different backgrounds and cultures, and then when I traveled around the world, I started eating foods that were so different, and my food palate was expanded. I love food from Thailand and from Bangladesh or from India, and I might not eat it every day, but it's fun to experience that. And here's the challenge. I can still hold on to my point of view, but I can be open to new ideas. Most of us have changed in our perspective as a young person, or maybe even as a teenager or 20 years old. My perspective of God and the world has changed over the years because I've been open to having new ideas. Now, that's kind of scary for some people because if that's all of a sudden, well, this is what I believe today, you mean I might not believe that tomorrow? What do I hold on to today? For me, the very core of it is trusting God, trusting yourself that you can evolve, that you can move to a higher consciousness. But there are some people who don't want to do that. There are some people who want to keep their head in the sand and they go, don't bother me with anything new. I just want to be like this. And I understand that.
It could also be that certain religions don't encourage it for the very reason that you explained. They don't want the people in their religious community thinking differently because they want them to follow a certain playbook. And so that can also be a challenge.
Yeah, because, when I was growing up, the minister would say, don't question. Doubting is a sin. Well, I disagree. I think doubting or questioning is, in fact, good. It makes us open up because many of us were given a set of beliefs about the world or about how we are. And just because we were given that set of beliefs, that doesn't make it right. My father was very driven. He actually had a nervous breakdown when he was 52 because he could never relax. He felt like he always had to be better, achieve more, because he had a low self-image. He had an 8th grade education. He said to me, Jerry, you're lazier. You got to work harder. And I found myself believing that I was lazy. And then I realized I'm not lazy. I have a master's degree. I went to college. I did this and I've done this. And that was a belief that I just bought into. I went, I don't even believe that. So I could change that belief.
I also wanted to ask you about people who perhaps don't have a belief. Maybe they're atheists or agnostic, or they're not really sure either way. How does this all apply to folks like them?
I think we have to have a respect for each other and some humility about our own beliefs. It was interesting. I had a friend who is agnostic. I said, what does that mean? He says, well, I don't know what's out there. And I go, well, then I must be agnostic too, because I don't know what's out there. I mean, none of us know what's on the other side. Now, we have our beliefs about that. We have our hope. Jesus talks about it. Buddha, Baha'i faith, and the Sikh scriptures, they talk about the other side, but we only have that from what we hope and we think. Jesus was more concerned, and this is in all of the major religions. The great teachers were more about how you lived your life on earth, how you treated one another and cared for yourself. Even my friends who are atheists or agnostic, I'd say the teachings from these religions are all very good to help you build your own self and your personhood. I have friends who are agnostic who read the book because they're kind of fascinated to hear the different perspectives. And because the 6 chapters that I have, Walking the Enlightened Path, The Power of Prayer, Loving Yourself, Loving Others, Karma, and then The Quest for Peace. And I break down different aspects of that, talking about patience and perfectionism, worry, anxiety, forgiveness. And so all those things that I explore in the book are really things to help improve your own personal life today.
Are you searching for a trusted merchant service provider for your business? SG Associates LLC is your partner for quality payment and merchant service solutions. With over 15 years of experience in credit card processing, SG Associates offers merchants the best pricing, products, and customer service available from a payment and solution service provider. Their number one goal is to save their merchants as much as possible on their credit card processing fees. To learn how they can help you, call 1-800-455-5211 or visit sg-associatesllc.com. What do we do then in situations where people are angry or perhaps they treat us badly? It's very hard to take the approach of love one another when somebody is insulting you or treating you in a bad way. And that's a difficult challenge for a lot of people because they're faced with that today. What's something that you can share that might help us handle that better?
I think that's a great question, and it's hard. When somebody's attacking you and you feel like you're being diminished, we have two kind of basic primal things, flee or fight. Some people will just leave, they'll shut down. And then the other instinct is to fight, to push back. And anger's not a bad thing. It's how you handle the anger, what you do with it. And so when somebody's angry, though, in a bad way, and they're attacking you, one of the things that's been helpful to myself is to not take things personally. That I realize when that person is upset, I don't know what's going on in that day. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're frustrated. Maybe they're angry. And they're attacking me. But really, it's an issue about something inside of themselves. And so the most that I can do is if I'm confident in myself, if I trust myself, and I can just have this kind of exterior shield to protect myself, that I don't let that go in. Now, when I was younger, I wasn't as confident in myself. I wasn't as secure in myself. So I would take it in. Oh, you're telling me I'm a stupid person. You're telling me I'm lazy. There's a part of me that was like, oh, maybe I am lazy. Maybe I am stupid. And then I'd get threatened. And then I'd fight back. Well, two things I think. One is to work on building your own self-confidence, learning to trust and believe in yourself. And then the second thing is to not take it personally. When somebody's attacking you, know that it's more about them than it is you.
And that takes some maturity and it takes practice too, because these are things that hypothetically we know we need to try, but more difficult to do in real world situations when you're being attacked by somebody in a physical space. Let's say somebody in front of you is saying terrible things. It's very hard to control your emotions. But I think that if you are comfortable in your own skin and you're more mature and able to handle that, then you can go in with a level-headed approach.
And, sometimes even I've been married 37 years. My wife and I had a lot of arguments. We were both very independent people the first 10 years. We would argue and try to change each other. And we'd get in arguments. And then you realize, okay, I got to take a break. We got to bring the temperature down. So you've got to go away so that your emotions can go down. And so sometimes now when somebody else would attack, I would then, just like do some breathing and say, I can't talk about this. When you're talking to me this way, I can't even hear you. Because it's hard to have a conversation when somebody's so ramped up for whatever reason, they're really not listening. They're really not going to have a conversation. There's a part of saying, I hear you're really angry about this, and I can talk to you about it, but I can't talk to you when you're yelling in my face.
It's acknowledging what is happening, acknowledging them, maybe even repeating what they said. So sometimes they can't even hear themselves because they're so upset about something. I think they want to be heard, but at the same time, you need to acknowledge and be mature enough to say, look, this might not be the right time. So let's take a step back. Let's think this through. And then if you're still interested in having a conversation, we can regroup.
And, and it might be to say, I can't continue this conversation until you can check out a little bit and cool down. And what happens is when somebody's that angry, their brain locks up. They aren't even really being rational. And so if you can step away, and maybe sometimes you physically back up a little bit, and you just kind of breathe, and you say, okay, this is maybe not the time and place. Because here's the thing, to have a conversation where somebody really feels angry about it, you can't talk about it in 5 minutes. It's like you're talking to me, and I'm getting ready to leave for the office or something. And so let's set a time that we could talk about this when we are both a little better. My wife and I would do that a lot of times, where we would put it on pause and say, just because we're not talking about it now doesn't mean We won't talk about it, but we'll talk about it when the temperature in the room is a little lower.
I suppose since we're talking specifically about a one-on-one communication, it would be even more challenging if you're in a room with people who disagree with you, because now you're being attacked by a group of people that are not appreciative of whatever message you have to say. And I think you kind of have to measure that and anticipate that you're sharing information that these people are not necessarily going to agree with. And so prepare yourself to handle how you're going to approach it when you're faced with that situation.
Well, you're right, because I've been at some forums that I've been a speaker at, and somebody will get up and they'll make this statement. And when these people of another faith or people like this are terrible, and they'll make some statement, and I'll just pause. And part of it is you have to control the situation. And if more than one person gets very loud and disruptive, sometimes you have to just put things on hold. I mean, if people really start yelling or shouting or being like that, they don't really want to have a conversation. They want to make their point heard. Unfortunately, what they're doing is their point isn't going to get heard. When I've done this for the forum, when somebody was very loud and I was the moderator and they were really upset, I just tried to slow it down. I tried to say back to them what I was hearing them say and say, now, I hear you're frustrated. I hear you're scared. So let's try to keep the temperature down. But it's hard at times.
Oh, yeah. More than at times.
There are school boards now, and they're having these conversations, and groups of people are coming in and just shouting. And so now they had to put the school board meeting on a Zoom conversation, where they can mute the person. And I think back to when we're talking about right now, what's going on, that there's such a polarity and there's such anger. There's been times like this before. In the 60s, we went through a difficult time through each generation. And I just think right now, because of the pandemic, because of the loss of jobs and people coming out and the racial issues, there's been a number of things that have opened up. And where we maybe had a little bit of respect and we were better at conversation, the best thing we can do is try to help people learn to respect one another and feel valued.
How do you break down the difference between tolerance and acceptance, and how do we approach them?
Some people don't want to give tolerance. If I value you as a human being and I am nice to you, that means I accept your decision. And that's not true. You can be nice and respectful to another person and still disagree with them politically, religiously, whatever points of view. Tolerance is kind of like, I put up with you, but I don't want to be around you. I put up with you. I think we need to have a level of respect for each other. So respect is that I might disagree with you, but I still think you have a right to your point of view. You're a human being as much as I am. And so I have respect for you, but I don't have to agree with you. And that's why I like the word respect.
What do we do in situations where people have religions that require other people to be converted to believe what they believe, or they set boundaries where if people don't embrace those beliefs, then there are consequences to that? How do we approach that?
That is difficult because in many of our faith traditions, I'll just have when people will come to me and they'll say, if you don't believe this way, you're going to go to hell. And I'll say to them, well, one, I'm glad you know God's mind because I don't know God's mind. I'm not going to make a judgment on your salvation, and you can make a judgment on mine. That's between me and God. When somebody wants to make those statements, I don't get threatened by them. I go, you might feel like I'm a terrible person because I don't believe like you, and I'm going to go to hell. I'm going to continue to love you and respect you. That's the best thing you can do, I think, is don't go down that path of judgment or anger. Live to a higher vibration. Live to a higher standard. That teaching is in all of our religions. Jesus talks about not judging another. And here was the woman who committed adultery. And he said to those people who were getting ready to stone her, the person who has never sinned can cast the first stone. So they all dropped their stones and walked away. And he said to the woman committing adultery, I do not condemn you either. Go and sin no more. So he's not going to condemn her and shame her because she committed adultery. He just says, go and don't do it anymore. Live a better life. Now that's powerful, isn't it?
I like to think that we are being better versions of ourselves. That's really what we're all trying to achieve. We want to be good people. We want to help others. We want to make a difference. And so if you approach life from that perspective, it's very exciting, and also it gives hope because you know that we all make mistakes. We all get frustrated by something or another. That's part of our humanity, but we can always strive to that next step. And if we dwell on the mistakes that we made, if we look at that as something that is so terrible that we have no hope, then we have nothing to strive for to be better and to make a better contribution in the world. And so I think that making mistakes is part of the learning process.
It is. And that's what I love about once I started learning the teachings of all of the major great teachers of our world religion, that you had the teachings in the Hindu scriptures that were thousands of years before Jesus. You had the teachings of the Baha'i, the Baha'u'llah, which became the Baha'i faith, and the Sikh scriptures. And then you had the Quran that Muhammad gave to the people of Islam. And you see that even though these are in different cultures, different times, different space, the same teachings were there. The core teachings of how to empower, how to live a better life, how to find inner peace and be a peacemaker and bring that happiness into the world. And so for me, that actually strengthened my belief in God, because it was like, wow, God, this universal intelligence, call it higher power, call it God, call it universal consciousness, whatever you want to. Don't get hung up on the words, but know that there's something beyond us that has spoken to these great teachers, these great people who were open to that wisdom and who wrote those words down. For me, that gives me that these great teachings do come from this power beyond us.
You took the time to put all this information in a book for us to be able to read and understand and get different perspectives on. So would you mind sharing what your book is about and how people get a hold of it?
The book is set up in a very easy way to read. It's not a book of theology, but it's set up with these 6 themes that I have mentioned: walking the enlightened path, the power of prayer, loving yourself, loving others, and then karma, or cause and effect, and then the quest for peace. And I've taken these 6 themes, and each theme is a week long. And I've written like 7 days for each theme. So each day I have an aspect of walking the enlightened path. Like the first day is awakening. The second one is connecting to creation. The third is finding the inner voice. So each one of these days, I have my own reflection that I've written. And then I have the scriptures from all of the major religions with that topic for the day. And then I have a prayer from a faith leader. And then I have questions for you to reflect on that you can write or just ponder on that will help you kind of expand and take a next step for the week. The book, The Peacemaker's Path, Multifaith Reflections to Deepen Your Spirituality. And you can get it on Amazon, and it's Kindle and paperback. And they actually have like an inside where you can read a little bit of it first if you want to get a feel of it. Or you can go to my website, jerryzehr.com. And on my website, I have some of my other writings. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me from there. I hope that people might find this and find it as a book to help uplift them and empower them to live a fuller life for their lives today.
Jerry, I so appreciate you being here and sharing this with us. Thank you.
It's good to be with you today. And I just hope that people who are listening, that they will know that they are a valued person, a child of God. They are lovable and cared for, and to not give up on themselves and give up on others. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap for this episode of Live Blissed Out. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Jerry Zehr for joining us on the show. If you have a question or comment for a future episode, all you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/LBOVM or click the link in the show notes to leave a brief audio message. If you find value in our show, please visit liveblessedout.com to reach out, subscribe, and share on social media. This show is made possible through listeners like you. Thank you. So long for now, and remember to keep moving forward.